Starting fresh. It's a term we all know. It's something that many of us have tried to do a time or two, but it's not always something that goes as we would like it to. So today I'm going to talk about what we as witches can bring to the equation to try and make the process work a little bit better. Stay tuned and I will let you know my couple of small insights. Witch Hazel again. Welcome to the cauldron. Sorry for the wonky lighting, but if I open up the blinds, I'm gonna be blinded. So, it is what it is for today. Starting fresh. I mentioned this in my last video that I have been trying to start fresh. And there were a couple of things I wanted to review with you that I think are very important that we don't normally take into consideration when we try to start things over. So first off, starting fresh, what does it mean? It usually comes up when we are feeling stuck in our current lifestyle or job or just habits. It's when we're feeling like we're not making any movement forward or progress. So what we often say to ourselves is, oh, if I could just go away for a while, just maybe change the job, change of scene, change something, then everything will be better. That may or may not work. I would say it probably will work for a short amount of time, but there are a couple of things that need to be taken into consideration if we want to make starting fresh a long-term thing, an actual real change. First off, signs. Taking a look at our environment, not just the emotions that we feel, because yes, we feel when things are stagnant, but we want to make sure that we're making a new start at the right time. In my case, last year was kind of it mid-year. Already at the beginning of the year, I felt like 2017 was really going to be different. There was something changing, something big happening. And I wasn't the only one. I had several friends, usually pagan friends of mine, who said, you know, I feel the same thing. Things are changing. There's a big shift going on right now. So I knew that was going to happen. But I also had several other things going on in my life that I needed to happen first. I needed to go through a progression before I could really concentrate on what this big change was. So the first part of the year encompassed most of that. And then around mid-year, a lot of signs basically started showing up. Symbols of change. Butterflies, dragonflies, just a lot of stuff happening at once. And with the butterflies, truly, I have to digress for a moment and tell you about these. Last year in Denver, we had a huge influx of painted lady butterflies. They're like these little mini monarch butterflies, and they were everywhere. I heard a news story about the airport thinking there was some weird blip on their screens. They thought it was a cloud or some weather, but it was the butterflies coming in for their migration. So for weeks, I was just walking through clouds of butterflies every time I went out. And it was, if that's not a sign, what is, right? All right, these stripes are really getting bad. I may have to blind myself here. Okay, sorry about that. I had to fix the blinds. So, looking around you, and I'm not talking necessarily physical signs like with the butterflies for me, but I took that as having great meaning. But looking around you to see what is the atmosphere, is it looking like it's favorable for change? Because if you can plan your change kind of around then, when you see things are looking like they might be in your favor, then it's more likely that making a change will be helpful. Now, in my case, I also got a couple of additional signs later on where I actually decided, okay, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna make the change I said I was going to. There was a new project that I was looking forward to starting, but it hadn't really worked out before, and I was a little bit nervous about trying again, and all of a sudden, doors opened up. Keep in mind, these doors are not necessarily always what you think of as positive. In my case, my work dried up. I was effectively out of work. But that gave me a lot of time to work on this project that I wanted to do, right? So I chose to look at that as a positive thing because what I had prepared for before gave me a little bit of a buffer to deal with that. It was not as much of a panic moment as it may have been otherwise. So looking around you for atmosphere. The next thing I want to talk about is when you make a change, especially if it's something big like moving, changing jobs, going someplace new, if it's out of state or another city, something like that, keep in mind that making that change is not necessarily the only factor. Because have you ever noticed you could go somewhere new and for a little while it's great, it's absolutely wonderful. But after some time, things start to revert back to the way they were. And that is because, all of us witches should know this is because we tend to take our baggage with us. We pack it in boxes. It could be physical stuff that we are carrying around with us. We take it emotionally with us. We drag the past and negativity and staleness with us. In my case, I had all of the above. I was packing up my things for a move and realized I don't need all of this. I had been holding on to some things that were very old, that were reminders of some negative times in my life. I said, why? Why bring that with me? Same thing with emotions. I did some clearing work before I left because I knew I was still holding on to some shadows. And I still need massive shadow work, but that's all a process. But the first thing is you have to acknowledge you're taking it with you. So you have to make sure that you get rid of as much as possible beforehand if you really want to make an effective, fresh start. All right, and last thing I want to talk about is when you think you're going along the correct path, and something comes along to derail you, like majorly derail you. In my case, I'll give you an example. I was gearing up for a massive change. I thought I had everything put together wonderfully, and I was excited. I was all about this new thing that I was gonna go and do and start, and life is starting over again. And then all of a sudden, out of left field, here comes, I walked into the library and randomly ran into my ex-fiancé, the man who left me standing at the altar, broke my heart, left me crying 10 years ago. 10 years. The man has not talked to me in 10 years. And all of a sudden, we see each other, say hello, and I could not get rid of him. He decided, well, do you need any help with anything? Or why don't we get a coffee? Why don't we do this and that? And because this is how I am, I said, for one thing, I said, sure, I'll take free food. I always do. And for another thing, sure, you can help me. You can do all of my heavy lifting for my move. You could, may have been better just to walk away from that whole scenario. But for me, the thing that stood out was, why now? Why 10 years later is all of this coming up again? I buried it so far away. But here it was coming up again. And that again goes back to signs, watching things around you. Whenever you're on, this is my opinion, whenever you're on the correct path, something is bound to come up that tries to deflect you from it. Something bars your way. And that's because we, in our little mortal forms, we don't like change. We're scared of it. We're frightened by it. And so our little egos try to protect us by putting things in our path that make us stop from moving on to something that we don't know. It may be dangerous, that thing we don't know, so we want to stay in where we are, even if where we are is not the best environment for us. So keep that in mind, because when you make a fresh start, things will come back to haunt you. And what you do about that, the choices you make to move through that, are what's important. So I think I'm going to end there. I just wanted to give that kind of background overview of what I meant by starting fresh, and I will continue on with my videos of productive record keeping, and when little things come up along the way, side items, I will try to add in a video about that to add some diversity a little bit here and there. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Blessed be.